This content is AI generated for informational purposes only and should not be directly used for clinical decision-making.
Hello, and welcome back to the Neurosurgery Hub podcast. I'm Dr. Aris, Senior Attending Neurosurgeon.
And I'm Dr. Alara, Research Fellow. Today, we're looking at a fascinating new study from the Journal of Stroke and Cerebrovascular Diseases, published in 2026. The paper is titled, Evacuation Time Course and Residual Hematoma Volume, Dual Correlates of Functional Independence in Stereotactic Aspiration with Thrombolysis for Intracerebral Hemorrhage.
This is a timely discussion, Alara. For years, we've been debating the how and when of managing spontaneous intracerebral hemorrhage, or ICH. We've moved from the ultra-aggressive craniotomies of the past toward these minimally invasive techniques. But this paper really drills down into the metrics that actually dictate whether a patient returns to their life or remains dependent.
Exactly. The study specifically examines patients undergoing stereotactic catheter aspiration followed by thrombolysis. The researchers were looking for the specific factors that influence mid to long-term functional outcomes. They focused on what they call the four horsemen of this procedure: TSTA, RHV, DT, and the final residual volume.
Let's break those down for our residents listening. TSTA is the time from symptom onset to aspiration. We always say time is brain, but in ICH, the secondary injury starts the moment that blood hits the parenchyma. Alara, how did the study frame the importance of that initial time course?
The study identifies TSTA as a primary correlate of functional independence. It's not just about getting the blood out eventually. It's about the evacuation time course. If the aspiration happens earlier in the window from symptom onset, the trajectory for functional recovery changes. They essentially looked at TSTA as a critical predictor alongside the actual volume remaining.
Which brings us to the dual correlates mentioned in the title. It's a two-pronged relationship: how fast you get there and how much you leave behind. They specifically looked at post-aspiration residual hematoma volume, or RHV. Now, in the OR, we always try to aspirate as much as safely possible during the initial pass before we place the catheter for thrombolysis.
Right, and the paper differentiates between that immediate post-aspiration RHV and the residual hematoma volume at treatment completion. This is an important distinction for medical students to grasp. You have the volume left after the initial stereotactic aspiration, and then you have the final volume left after the duration of thrombolysis, or DT, is finished.
And that's a delicate balance. Thrombolysis isn't instant. We're often dripping out to place or another thrombolytic through the catheter over several days. The duration of thrombolysis is a key variable here. If the DT is too long, are we increasing risks? If it's too short, is the residual volume too high?
That's the crux of the paper. They found that both the time course and the residual volumes, both post-aspiration and at the end of treatment, are dual correlates of functional independence. It suggests that our goal shouldn't just be reduction, but reaching a specific threshold of residual volume within a specific time frame.
It's interesting because it moves the conversation away from just the surgical success of the aspiration itself and looks at the entire treatment completion phase. For the practicing neurosurgeons listening, this reinforces that the management doesn't end when you leave the OR. The management continues through the duration of thrombolysis until that final residual hematoma volume is minimized.
And we have to consider the mid to long-term aspect. Many studies only look at 30-day mortality. This study is looking at functional independence, patients being able to care for themselves. They found that the volume left behind at the very end of the thrombolysis phase is just as vital as how quickly we started the aspiration.
It really emphasizes the dual nature. You could have a very fast TSTA, get the patient to the suite quickly, but if your residual hematoma volume is high because the aspiration was ineffective or the thrombolysis was cut short, the outcome suffers. Conversely, you could get a perfect evacuation, but if it took too long to get started, the secondary injury might have already capped the patient's potential for functional independence.
Precisely. So for the residents on call tonight, the takeaway from this 2026 study is to optimize both ends of the equation, minimize the TSTA, get that aspiration started, and then meticulously manage the thrombolysis to ensure the final residual hematoma volume is as low as possible.
Excellent summary, Alara. It's about the precision of the aspiration and the persistence of the thrombolysis. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the Journal of Stroke and Cerebrovascular Diseases.
Thanks for joining us on the Neurosurgery Hub podcast. We'll see you in the next episode.